There are many theme park or Disney related stories that I'd like to talk more about, but none of them come close to the full story of Euro Disneyland. This is a story filled with blind enthusiasm, misunderstood talent, tragic disappointment and just complete panic. Luckily, the Disneyland Paris resort has managed to recover from their turbulent beginnings, but at one point in time, the future wasn't very certain for this park. This is Michael Eisner, former CEO of the Walt Disney Company. During Eisner's years at the head of the company, he experienced both immense success and terrible failure. A lot of people hate Eisner for his bad business decisions and apparently his unfriendly leadership style. Now, I have never worked for him and I did not experience any direct effects caused by his bad business decisions, so I'll be honest, I quite like him for some reason. Possibly because I like his success stories more than his less successful stories, but I digress. Eisner became the CEO of the Walt Disney Company in September of 1984, just over a year after the opening of Disney's first theme park outside of the US, Tokyo Disneyland. This park was and is still owned and operated by another company called the Oriental Land Company. At the time, Disney wasn't sure whether or not a Disney theme park would work outside of the US. So they basically told this company they could build and operate the new Disney park for them and split the profits. The Oriental Land Company would also pay Disney for the use of the Disney name, brand and intellectual properties. Of course, the design of the lands and attractions were still in the hands of the Disney Imagineers.
Tokyo Disneyland opens April 15th, and its backers' biggest worry is it will be too popular.
Disney played it safe for Tokyo Disneyland. They weren't as much involved in the risks of opening a new theme park, and because of that, they also get a smaller slice of the very successful pie. Tokyo Disneyland immediately grabbed the attention of the Japanese, and they came to visit the park in masses. It was an immediate success. Disney saw this and realized that they probably made a mistake. One of their most successful theme parks was now in the hands of another company. Still, this venture had been very profitable for the Walt Disney Company and taught them a valuable lesson. Disney also works outside of the US.
Japanese lyrics and some, not many, Japanese signs are among the few changes the Disney people had to make in transferring Walt Disney's Dream World to Japan. They were easy. A little harder was getting Japanese dancers seeking work at Tokyo Disneyland to sing Disney hits that cannot be translated.
Even before Michael Eisner became CEO of the Walt Disney Company, there were plans to build a Disney theme park in Europe. After all, most of the Disney stories at that point were based on European stories. Snow White was written by the Brothers Grimm from Germany, Pinocchio was written by an Italian dude and Sleeping Beauty by a Frenchman. Europeans were already familiar with these stories. In the years after the opening of Tokyo Disneyland, it became apparent that there was in fact enough interest in the idea of a Disney park outside of the US. So, in the first years of Michael Eisner's leadership at Disney, work started on planning a Disneyland for Europe. This time they weren't going to partner with another large company to operate their new park. They were going to do it all on their own. Like a big boy company going abroad for the first time without their parents or any supervision. What could possibly go wrong? Eisner was looking for the perfect location in Europe to build Disney's new money-making machine. Many countries had already contacted Disney in the past and asked them to build a Disney theme park on their soil. Of course, having a large theme park destination resort in your country or near your city would provide the surrounding area with more jobs, more popularity, more tourism, and consequently a huge economic boost. So Disney roughly had the entirety of Europe to choose from. They ended up with two serious options, one in Spain and one in France. Of course, we all know now that they chose the one in France, but there was actually some meaning behind that decision. First of all, the location near Paris, France was very much in the center of mainland Europe. People from the Netherlands, Belgium, Germany and Luxembourg would all be within driving distance from this location. Additionally, people from the UK, Spain, Italy would all be within a short flight distance, and of course France itself is a very large country that already attracted many tourists from around the world. Secondly, the exact location had some historical significance for the Walt Disney Company. At the age of 18 years old, Walt Disney himself was sent to France to be an ambulance driver for the Red Cross in World War I. He visited the Marne-la-Vallée region in 1919. It's even said that Walt Disney's family tree goes back to a little village in Normandy called Isigny-sur-Mer. Over the years, Dissigny, which means from Isigny, has slowly transformed into the name Disney. I don't know if that's actually true, but at least now you've heard it from me. In 1985, a letter of intent was signed by Michael Eisner and the Prime Minister of France, proposing to build a Disney park in Marne-la-Vallée, 32 kilometers east of Paris. It took another year and a half of negotiations before the final agreement was officially signed in 1987.
This agreement with the Walt Disney Company is a very interesting contract and affair. I'm sure it will be a great success because it's Disney Company and because it's France.
Disney agreed to build a European version of Disneyland with a so-called French flavor. I'm personally very happy that they didn't implement a French smell, because some of you snail eaters could probably use a shower every once in a while. Don't worry, the French won't get angry with me. They're all on strike anyway. Despite Disney's claim to give the park a French flavor, the French didn't really welcome them with open arms when the plans were announced. In fact, they welcomed them with torches and threatened to burn the place to the ground. They saw the new Disney theme park as a capitalistic American invasion of their beautiful country and the French culture. At this point, Michael Eisner and the Walt Disney Company in general should have responded by saying, "We're not going to impose the American culture on any of you. We are here to create a world-class resort destination based on our experience in the entertainment industry. We will study the culture of France and the other European countries to build a destination that respects your culture completely and that will create many economical benefits within the surrounding area." But they didn't come out and say that. Instead, they made it worse with almost everything they did. Word got out that during development meetings, Disney managers, including Michael Eisner, insisted that everyone in the meeting spoke English. I don't know if you've ever been to France, but let me tell you, even though a French person might know how to speak English, they won't do it unless they absolutely have to. And by that I don't mean typical day-to-day stuff, like when someone asks you for directions. No, I mean life-threatening situations. If a French person could save their own life by speaking English, they would do it still with some hesitation.
Hedgehog.
C'est une ville, ça, je pense. Ouais.
Of course, this sparked outrage with French citizens. Additionally, those who considered applying for a job at the new theme park were met with strict guidelines for wearing jewelry, facial hair and hairstyles in general. These guidelines did not sit well with the French. In fact, Disney later learned that imposing these guidelines, while completely legal in the United States, was in fact illegal in France. Just like it's illegal not to be subscribed to my channel. I upload theme park related videos and, to be honest, whatever other topic interests me. The videos take a lot of time to make and I'm really trying to make them as entertaining as possible, so if you're enjoying, please like the video. Thanks. Perhaps the most infuriating piece of information for the French and other Europeans was the fact that Disney would not change their policy of not serving alcohol in their parks. French people drink wine with their food, so do Italians. Germans and Belgians drink beer, and many other European countries have similar habits. Going to a theme park means having a day off. If these people drink even during their normal working lives, what did you think they wanted to do when they have a day off? And no, the answer is not to go out and drink a liter of Coca-Cola and eat some hamburgers. All of these factors led to the French to start protesting and boycotting everything that had to do with Disney. The new park would be named Euro Disneyland, which in itself was also a mistake. While Euro means something extravagant to an American, it is mostly associated with business and commerce among Europeans themselves, making the idea for the park seem even more of a money grab than it already was. Eisner and the Imagineers were very much aware of the commotion surrounding Euro Disneyland, and instead of thinking twice about their massive investment in this new park, they went all in. Euro Disneyland would be the largest Magic Kingdom park Disney had ever built at that point. In addition to the theme park, the resort would feature 6 massive themed hotels and the Davy Crockett Ranch, which has 600 log cabins. Hotel Newport Bay would be one of the largest hotels in all of Europe when it opened, with a staggering 1,093 hotel rooms. And that's just one out of the 6 hotels. Before Euro Disneyland even opened its doors, Disney had already made plans for additional parks. A European version of Epcot was planned, as well as a full water park and also a copy of Disney's MGM Studios. In the original master plan, there was also even more land designated for future hotels and possibly more theme parks. In Eisner's mind, he was creating Walt Disney World, but in Europe. He and his team were powered by blind enthusiasm. Yes, Euro Disneyland was going 1,000 miles an hour, elbows first, straight into becoming an inevitable failure. Still, not everyone who worked on this park made stupid mistakes. Tony Baxter was assigned to be the lead Imagineer for Euro Disneyland. He would assemble a team of passionate and very talented Imagineers who, despite the park's failure, would create one of the most beautiful theme parks in the world. There's a lot to say about Michael Eisner's run as CEO of the Walt Disney Company, but one thing's for sure, he gave the Imagineers for Euro Disneyland the right tools and enough freedom to come up with some awesome stuff. Creativity was always encouraged. Tony Baxter and his team were met with the challenge of translating the success of a Magic Kingdom park for European audiences. They realized that people in Europe view things such as architecture and landscaping very differently from Americans. For example, a narrow street with cobblestone pavement and ruins of a castle on the hill in the background are a decently common sight in many parts of Europe, whereas this exact same view would be very unusual in the United States. Americans often romanticize European architecture and landscapes. This time it was up to the Imagineers to impress the Europeans instead of the Americans. If you're a fan of Disney parks or theme parks in general, you will probably be able to appreciate what the Imagineers did for Euro Disneyland. Some of the lands and attractions for this park were considered to be the best version of that land or attraction in all of Disney, especially at the time when they opened. It's a shame really that the public perception of Euro Disneyland was overshadowed by negativity during the development and early years of the park's existence. The park itself is beautiful and very well thought out. I sometimes feel like the average European visitor doesn't even understand what the meaning behind most of the park is. For example, when I visited the park with my family, and I'm Dutch by the way, I feel like the storyline and some of the smaller details were just lost on them. They didn't even notice the story, let alone appreciate it, and I think that goes for most of the average European visitors. Let's go over some of the highlights of Euro Disneyland as it was when it first opened, which to be honest isn't much different from what it is now. To start off, guests were welcomed by the incredibly elaborate Fantasia Gardens. This is the area before the entrance of the park. Many winding paths, lush landscaping, gazebos and fountains gave the guests a true sense of arrival. The gardens were meant as a nod to the pleasure gardens and nature parks that originated in Europe. Whether you would come by car, train or with one of the shuttle buses for the on-site hotels, everyone would go through Fantasia Gardens in order to get to the entrance of the park. Looking out over these gardens is the luxurious Victorian-style Disneyland Hotel, which also acted as the entrance to the park. This was the first ever theme park hotel to be built within the boundaries of a park. The architecture of the building fits in with the architecture of Main Street, USA. Once guests entered the park, they were welcomed by the familiar sight of the train station. Some of the facades in Main Street were copied from other Disney parks and some were designed specially for Euro Disneyland. The City Hall, the Transportation Center, the train station, Main Street Motors are all unique parts of this Main Street. You can probably tell that a lot of these buildings seem more detailed than the ones in the other Disney parks. This is how the Imagineers wanted to impress the European audiences. With Paris being just half an hour drive away from the park, they expected the guests to be used to rich architecture and elaborate details. And not to step on anyone's feet, but Orlando and Anaheim aren't really known for their impressive architecture. The climate in Paris was also of concern to the Imagineers. In Tokyo they protected guests from the rain by adding a roof over Main Street, but both Eddie Sotto and Tony Baxter weren't big fans of that solution. They would build arcades for people to be able to walk through on both sides of Main Street. On the left side is the Liberty Arcade, which is decorated to tell the story of the Statue of Liberty and the connection between the United States and France. On the right side is the Discovery Arcade, which focuses on the futuristic world created by visionaries of the past. Besides providing some shelter from bad weather, these arcades actually showcase some amazing artifacts. Everything created for Euro Disneyland had meaning behind it. The same goes for Frontierland, perhaps the most impressive land in this park. The main attraction in this land is Big Thunder Mountain, but not your Anaheim or Florida ride. This ride is much more thrilling than any other Big Thunder Mountain. The coaster itself is located on an island in the middle of the rivers of the far west. The station building is on the other side of the river, and in order to get to the island, the trains go deep underground beneath the river. The tunnels are completely dark and you go quite fast for a mine train. I think the tunnel at the end of the ride when you head back to the station is the best part. Because Big Thunder Mountain is in the center of the land, no matter where in Frontierland you are, you can always see one of the mine trains going by, and it makes the land feel alive. That is, if the park doesn't decide to close Big Thunder Mountain for 13 months, only to give it a new coat of paint every once in a while. But that's a topic for another moment. The other main attraction in this land is Phantom Manor, Paris' version of the Haunted Mansion, but again it's not your standard Haunted Mansion. For the entirety of Frontierland, the Imagineers created one story that ties the whole land together. You're in the town of Thunder Mesa during the time of the gold rush. Big Thunder Mountain is a gold mine owned by the wealthy Ravenswood family who lived in this once beautiful manor. It has since fallen into decay, and the story goes that Mr. Ravenswood did something terrible to prevent his daughter from marrying someone from another town. All of the other buildings in the land are connected to this storyline in one way or another. It's an amazing level of detail that I don't think you can find in many other theme parks, but again, I feel like most Europeans just say, "Hey, this is Cowboy Land," and then proceed with their day without noticing any of the theming that connects with the storyline. Next we head over to Adventureland. In other Disney parks, Adventureland never really had an icon or a so-called weenie like Frontierland has Big Thunder Mountain, Fantasyland has the castle and Tomorrowland has Space Mountain. In the other parks it was supposed to be a wild jungle, which doesn't need a focal point because the land is meant to separate you from the rest of the park and almost make you feel lost in the jungle. Euro Disneyland was meant to attract guests from multiple countries who all speak another language, so they decided to build a centerpiece for this land to make navigating the land a bit easier. The Swiss Family Robinson Treehouse is that centerpiece. It is a very fun walkthrough attraction and I'm always amazed by how much theming they were able to fit inside the branches of that fake tree. Another highlight of Adventureland is Adventure Isle, which is made up of Skull Rock with various caves and pathways and the pirate ship. Of course, this ties in with the main attraction of this land, Pirates of the Caribbean. Even though the exterior looks totally different from any other Pirates attraction, this ride is basically Pirates as you know it, but a bit more extravagant. It has lots of amazing details and a fantastic queue line that is in itself probably worth the wait. There is an impressive scene where two pirates battle each other with swords. The animatronics were programmed so well that the swords would actually clash with each other, just like how the American and French culture clashed during its creation. Of course, there is also a restaurant in the ride, which was originally named the Blue Lagoon. Amazing atmosphere. Something that's also worth mentioning is that the land's boundaries are very well done. It's not walking from one land to another and seeing things change very drastically. It's very subtle. For example, when you walk from Adventureland to Fantasyland, you have this amazing transition. There's a small building with some arches, and on one side it's themed to fit within the Pirates and Adventureland theme, and on the other side it fits in with the medieval Fantasyland buildings, and it just works so well. It fits in both lands and you don't even notice a drastic change when you walk through it. While we're in Fantasyland, we're gonna have to talk about the castle. The centerpiece and the main weenie of Euro Disneyland. Again, the Imagineers wanted to impress the Europeans with this castle. Even though most Europeans might have seen the real-life castles that other Disney castles were inspired by. So instead of copying famous real-life castles, they decided to focus more on a fantasy-inspired architectural style. Not only for the castle, but in fact for the entire land. It's not necessarily realistic, but that's the whole point. You can go to the actual places in Europe if you wanted to see a realistic village or a realistic castle. This is Disneyland and guests want to be part of the story, so they came up with Sleeping Beauty Castle, which sat on a hill with oddly shaped trees, and beneath guests can go inside the Dragon's Grotto and get a glimpse of what used to be the largest animatronic figure Disney had ever produced. The windows in the towers, the pink and blue color scheme, the waterfall next to the grotto, this castle just makes sense. It's a welcoming sight every time you see it. The same fantasy-inspired style was implemented in the other buildings in Fantasyland. Of course, they built some of the classic Disney dark rides as well. Peter Pan's Flight, Snow White's Scary Adventures and It's a Small World all found their way into Euro Disneyland. And I really think this is the best Fantasyland Disney has made to this day.
The shingles on the buildings are more colorful than shingles that you would see in other villages. The trees have wonderful, exotic, fanciful shapes to them. The lampposts may integrate a higher degree of colored glass, even things like finials. So everything is slightly out of this world. You've gone to another world. You just haven't gone to another village. You've gone to an extraordinary world of your dreams.
The fifth and final land for Euro Disneyland was Discoveryland, created to solve the famous Tomorrowland problem. What is the famous Tomorrowland problem, you might ask? Well, tomorrow always comes, so when you create a land themed around the future, the land will feel outdated when that future becomes the present, or when the perception of the future shifts. Discoveryland is themed to a historical view of the future, a future as imagined by visionaries like Jules Verne, whose stories were a major inspiration to the theme of this land. The sort of steampunk feel is very creative and unique in my opinion. Discoveryland opened without Space Mountain, which was added a couple years after the opening of the park. So the main attraction in this land was Le Visionarium, which was a 360-degree film about time traveling. I've never experienced this ride because it was replaced with Buzz Lightyear's Laser Blast in 2006. Another stupid decision if you ask me, because that doesn't fit within the theme of this land. From what I've seen online, Le Visionarium seems like it was a great attraction at the time, but I think it was hard for non-French speaking people to understand the full story.
Oh là là, qu'est-ce que j'ai fait?
So, those are all the lands and their main attractions for Euro Disneyland when it opened, but there was more to Euro Disney than just the theme park. They also had this. Yeah, I don't know what they were thinking either. Euro Disneyland opened with its own shopping and entertainment center called Festival Disney, which was later renamed to Disney Village. It's still hard to believe that the company was building this, while at the same time they were building this right next door. And when they looked at it, they probably said, yeah, that seems like it's about the same quality. Now, I sure don't want to insult anyone who worked on creating Festival Disney at the time. I am 100% certain that the people behind this had the best possible intentions of creating a shopping and entertainment center that would celebrate American culture while focusing on European audiences. You had to comply with Disney's wishes and probably a low budget, I get all that. But my god, this entire area has zero character and personality. If Sleeping Beauty Castle, which is located just a couple hundred meters away from this, has the character and personality of a person like Walt Disney, then Festival Disney in its entirety had the character and personality of a sliced pickle. Yes, I actually said that. As I've mentioned before, Euro Disney opened with 6 themed hotels and the Davy Crockett Ranch. The underlying idea behind all of the hotels was to theme each hotel around an American location that the Imagineers thought the Europeans found interesting. Because if there's anything the Europeans like, it's being immersed in American surroundings. So, the Disneyland Hotel was themed to the time of Main Street, USA and its Victorian architecture. Hotel New York was, well, I think that one is quite obvious. Newport Bay is based on the pleasure hotels in the United States from the late 19th century. Sequoia Lodge is a celebration of America's national parks. Cheyenne fits in with the Wild West theme that can also be found inside the park, and Santa Fe tells the story of Route 66 and New Mexico. Oh, and Davy Crockett is the name that Europeans now associate with log cabins, but to be honest, we still don't know who the hell Davy Crockett is. What's important is that the people behind Euro Disneyland were in fact very talented. They created something beautiful that was very well thought out, that had amazing details. They had no creative limitations, and even if they were held back, they still tried to do the best they could. The challenges of creating something for Europeans pushed the Imagineers even further to be more creative. It's just a shame that their efforts were targeted towards the wrong audience. I think if Euro Disneyland was built in the United States as a third Disney resort, it would have been an amazing success right from the start. The commotion surrounding the creation of the resort was enough for Europeans to form a negative view of Euro Disneyland in general. It didn't matter how beautiful the park was or how amazing the attractions were. The fact that Disney, an American company, told the French that they couldn't order a glass of wine with their food created a misunderstanding of the Imagineers' talent. They did in fact try to accommodate European audiences, and they did make changes that resulted in one of the most beautiful theme parks in the world. But Europeans wouldn't be able to appreciate it.
With customary panache, America prepares to stick the boot in. But as the land of the Star-Spangled Banner lines up to stamp its footprint on the heart of cultural France, the doubters have come out in force. Behind the set Disney smiles, there are worries. French locals haven't welcomed Mickey and friends with open arms. They think it's a goofy idea. Some reckon taxpayers have been unfairly stung. Others are angry about the influx of American culture.
And your special guest host, Mickey Mouse.
But in the land where the rodent rules, another all-American Mickey is king.
If we don't make some money, you'll be interviewing somebody else here on the next occasion, whatever that may be. So I'm hopeful. If enough people come, we'll make money.
The day had finally come. On the 12th of April 1992, Disney would finally open their new resort destination. A new Magic Kingdom theme park with world-class attractions and theming, 6 themed hotels and a campground, and their shopping and entertainment center, all tied together under one name, Euro Disney. This was Michael Eisner's big project. The Imagineers had put their heart and soul into the creation of this place. Robert Fitzpatrick, the chairman of the new Euro Disney Resort, expressed just one fear. My biggest fear is that we will be too successful. In the weeks leading up to the official opening of the resort, a government survey was conducted which indicated that 500,000 people would visit the park on opening day. 90,000 cars were expected to enter the Euro Disneyland complex. In order to prevent chaos, radio stations and TV programs warned people about the expected traffic throughout the surrounding area of the resort in the days before the official opening. Additionally, and in rather stereotypical fashion, people working for the French railway network, which connected the city of Paris to Euro Disneyland, decided to go on strike on opening day, which caused more warnings from the railway company to avoid using public transport to visit Euro Disneyland from the center of Paris in order to prevent more chaos. Disney, however, was ready for the large crowds. They were able to master the art of handling large crowds ever since the original Disneyland opened in 1955. The park was built with an average daily attendance of 60,000 people in mind for the first operating years.
Et maintenant, je déclare Euro Disney officiellement ouvert.
On opening day, April 12, 1992, Euro Disneyland welcomed just 25,000 visitors to the park. About 475,000 less than they expected to enter the complex. Much like the voice crack in Michael Eisner's official opening remarks, the low attendance number came as an embarrassing surprise. At first, Disney management thought the warnings from TV and radio stations to stay away on opening day because of the traffic worked a bit too well. At least that's what they hoped the reason was. It turned out that wasn't the reason. In the first weeks and months of the park's operational life, the average daily attendance was about 25,000 people, the same amount as on opening day, which is still 35,000 people less than they expected every single day. To add to the disappointment, the people who did visit the park were spending 12% less money during their visit than Disney had anticipated, which could partially be explained by the recession that was going on in France. The occupancy rate for the 6 themed hotels and the campground were incredibly low because Europeans didn't consider Euro Disneyland to be a multiple-day destination. The hotels were also very expensive. For the same price as a Disney hotel, you could stay in a luxury hotel in the city of Paris, which seemed more attractive to the average European tourist. People who did book an overnight stay in the Euro Disney hotels did just that. They booked 1 overnight stay, while Disney expected them to stay at least 2 nights. Even the employees of Euro Disneyland were a disappointment to Euro Disneyland. In May of 1992, so a month after opening, roughly 25% of Euro Disney's workforce, approximately 3,000 people, had resigned because of unacceptable working conditions. After the opening of Euro Disneyland, the commotion surrounding the no alcohol policy, the staff guidelines and the clash of the American and French cultures did not just fade away. So at this point in time, Disney had spent $4.4 billion on a new theme park destination in France that was rapidly losing money due to low attendance. Because of this park, the French hated them more than ever. The Europeans didn't understand the value of the resort in general. The people working for the company were quitting their jobs at alarming rates, and the entire world was now made aware of the fact that Disney's latest mega investment turned out to be a failure, despite expressing their fear of being too successful. Quite tragic news for a park so well designed. Yeah, I imagine Michael Eisner wasn't really a charming father at the dinner table from April 1992 to about 1994. Everyone knew Euro Disneyland was his big thing. Sure, other people were also involved with the creation of this mistake, but in the end, Eisner was the CEO of the Walt Disney Company. So, what is the first thing you do when you've made a huge mistake? You try to cover it up.
Actually, Euro Disney, which is what you're referring to, has had 18 million people there since we opened a year and a half ago. The product is spectacular. The people that come there love it. The problem we've had there is it's the worst recession possibly since the Second World War, certainly since the early 80s.
Saying the recession in France is the only reason why Euro Disneyland failed is like saying the Titanic sank only because the people on board weighed it down. It might have contributed to the problem, but that's not the actual reason. So, after covering up doesn't solve the problem of your mistake, what do you do next? You panic. You realize you need to do something quickly before it gets much, much worse. Eisner, and to be fair the Walt Disney Company in general, did panic. During this phase of complete panic they did a number of things. Number 1. The plans for any future second and third gate theme park were put on hold, which at the time included planning for a Disney MGM Studios Europe, which was meant to open in 1996, and a European version of Epcot somewhere down the line. Number 2. The prices for all the themed hotels were lowered in an effort to make the resort hotels more attractive and achieve a higher occupancy rate. Number 3. In order to keep costs down, Hotel Newport Bay, which was the largest hotel in the entire resort, would close down completely in the winter season of 1992. Number 4. Lift the alcohol ban in the park in order to make the park more attractive for French and other European visitors. Number 5. Eisner asked the banks that invested in Euro Disneyland if they could help them with the $3 billion debt they were in at that point.
It's going to be a long time ahead before we're going to get our money even half back, let alone fully back.
And number 6. As a last resort and in order to reach an agreement with the banks and investors, Michael Eisner threatened to close down Euro Disneyland completely and abandon the land, leaving it with the banks to avoid further losses and debt for the company. It is still staggering to me that a company as big as Disney would actually see the closure of their 20-month-old, most beautiful theme park as a genuine option and announce it to the world. How blind or maybe even ignorant have you been if you really thought this would be a huge success? This is probably one of the biggest mistakes, or at least the most public business mistake ever made. And still, for some reason, I admire the enthusiasm. I admire Eisner's big plans and the Imagineers for trying to adapt to a European audience as much as possible. I even admire the fact that they banned alcohol in a weird way, because they stuck with their principles. Walt said no alcohol in Disneyland, so no alcohol, no matter what the French say. Of course they came around eventually, but you've got to give Disney at least some credit. They were just as bloody-minded as the French themselves, which is probably why they clashed in the first place. In 1994, after Eisner threatened to close the park down, a deal was made. Disney's stake in the Euro Disney Company would lower to 39%. 37% of the company would be owned by the banks, who had also agreed to forego interest payments until 1997. And a new investor, Prince Al Walid of Saudi Arabia, would pump another $300 million into the company in exchange for a 24% stake of Euro Disney. This gave Euro Disney a second chance. They had a few years and more funds to try and turn the resort into a profitable company. In 1995, after being renamed to Disneyland Paris, the park opened its newest and most exciting attraction yet, Space Mountain from the Earth to the Moon. A thrilling indoor roller coaster featuring inversions, an uphill launch and onboard audio track. Plans for the ride were already made before the opening of the park. In those plans, Space Mountain would be part of a bigger indoor area. Because of Disneyland Paris's rocky start, those plans were reduced to just a Space Mountain roller coaster. Still, the attraction was an Imagineering masterpiece, much like the rest of the park. With the addition of great marketing and factoring in all of the changes that were made in the panic phase, Disneyland Paris would finally turn a profit at the end of 1995. Sadly, Space Mountain was the last major expansion of Disneyland Park in Paris to this day. In the years after Space Mountain opened, the park's financial situation was improved compared to the first years, but the park would still face a loss during some years. Disney was contractually obligated to open a second gate theme park within 10 years of the resort's first opening. That was meant to be Disney's MGM Studios Europe in 1996, but of course Michael Eisner wasn't going to take any risks. A combination of a low budget and a lackluster concept for a theme park resulted in the worst Disney park ever created. Walt Disney Studios opened on March 16, 2002. Disney fulfilled their obligation to build a second gate park, and that is about all that needs to be said. We'll get into that one another time. In 2017, the Walt Disney Company took over Euro Disney SCA, the company that owns Disneyland Paris, completely. And since then, and especially after the pandemic, Disneyland Paris has been breaking profit records year after year. Of course, a major investment is planned for the Walt Disney Studios park, but sadly, nothing has been announced for Disneyland Park itself. But hey, we shouldn't complain. Remember those threats from Michael Eisner? The place could have been abandoned about 30 years ago, and because of Michael Eisner's business mistakes, Europe now has one of the most profitable and beautiful Disney theme parks ever made, even if we didn't really deserve it in the first place. Thanks for watching.